The ability to speak might not make you intelligent, but we're going to try to prove otherwise. This is the Clashing Sabers podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon, and I'm here with my co-host. He's the man who once had a force vision so strong, he actually became Jar Jar Binks. It's
Devore.
Devore, buddy. How you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I am good. I'm excited to be back on the mic with you. Of course, we had Drew here last time joining us as we talked about The Mandalorian and Grogu, and now it's back to you and me doing what we do, and super excited about that. So if you haven't had a chance to listen already, guys, make sure you go back and listen to our Mandalorian and Grogu episode where we looked at that and had Drew back on the podcast for the first time in a while, which is a lot of fun. Tonight, we're getting back into our Jedi Path series that we've been doing, going over the chapters of the book that I am writing, where I'm looking at different elements of Star Wars and deep diving into the characters and the philosophy and things of that nature. And so tonight's episode is going to be about perception creates reality, which is one of what I think is one of the most important chapters in the book. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic and give you guys a little insight. And like I've said before, some of the stuff we cover might be in the book. Some of it might be just additional information. We're just kind of going to have a conversation around the idea, and it'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to getting into that. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening, watching right now, so that you can stay up to date. I will have more updates on the book as I am working on it. I actually am on Devore, this is big news. I am on the last chapter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah, it's coming together. I have the last chapter and the introduction to write, and then we get into the editing process. Mark is doing the art for it, which is going to be absolutely amazing. I can't wait for you guys to see that. So a lot of big things coming. So just make sure you're subscribed here to the Clashing Sabers Network so that we can, so you can stay up to date and we can give you all the information on all of that. In the meantime, we have a very important topic to talk about. Not just perception creates reality, but Devore, what have you been Star Warsing lately?
Let's see. I'm trying to think since we last talked. Probably not much really, I don't think. It is a big month here. You know, we're recording and this episode is coming out in July, and you know, we've got 2 books coming out, which feels like like it feels like a change of pace because it's been so long since we've gotten a Star Wars book. It's been since, what was it, February or whatever it was that Low read, maybe even January. And yeah, I think 2 really promising books coming out at the end of the month. So I'm excited to Star Wars those guys.
For sure. So for the listeners, tell them what the 2 books are a little bit, and then we'll talk about which ones we're most excited about.
Yeah, so we got 2. They're coming out basically like within a week of each other, I think. Right at the very end of July. So we've got Eyes Like Stars by Ashley Poston. I don't exactly know how to pronounce her last name. Which is being branded and kind of marketed as a Star Wars romance novel. It's part of this new sort of genre initiative that Star Wars Publishing is doing. There's a middle grade horror one that's going to be coming out in the fall, maybe September, October, something like that. So we got that, and that's going to be pretty much what we know about it so far. Is it's the sort of love story, and it's kind of set like maybe like right before Force Awakens, you know, like right before those events, kind of Rise of the First Order stuff. And then we've got Legacy by Madeline Rue, which is going to be in between The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, which is going to tell us the sort of Rey Leia training story and how the Skywalker saber got rebuilt and all that stuff.
So I know which one I'm more excited about, which is not going to surprise anybody. But you can throw us a curveball sometimes. So which one are you most excited about?
I mean, it is still Legacy for me.
Is it? Okay.
I mean, I'm very eager to get my hands on Eyes Like Stars and do that because, you know, some of the Star Wars romance books are some of my, like The Lost Stars is my favorite Star Wars book. And there's some really great sort of romance stories that are told in the books. So I'm excited to get one. But like, this is like, I mean, for a lot of us, like since Rise of Skywalker, like whatever your feelings about that movie, like we've wanted that story.
For sure.
And so I'm really, really excited for that book.
Yeah, and I hope like, I hope they go all the way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, sometimes they market books as like it's this big thing, and then it kind of is not that. I think of like Master and Evil. Oh, it's going to be this great Vader book and stuff, and then it really doesn't tell the story through the eyes of Vader. Like it's still a good book, but it didn't really, for me, do everything that it said it was
Mm-hmm.
going to do. Whereas this, like, of course, we don't have Carrie Fisher around anymore. We can't go tell more stories with Leia and Rey in the movies or anything like that.
Yeah.
So go all the way. Give us everything. Make
Mm-hmm.
this the epic book that it should be. I posted today what we were talking about on the last episode with, or maybe it was yesterday, with Legends versus Canon and how, we prefer new canon. But one of the things you got to give Legends credit for is when its highs hit, its highs really hit. When you
Yeah.
have your Plagueis, your Bane, your Kenobi, like those stories really, really hit. And we need one of those. We haven't had one of those in a minute. I feel like in the new canon, we haven't had a Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade. We haven't had a Shadow of the Sith. Something that really just changes the game. And I feel like Legacy can be one of those books.
I agree. I mean, if you look at like Star Wars publishing, some of the strongest books have been those Master and Apprentice books. Whether you're talking about literally the book called Master and Apprentice,
yeah.
yeah. Whether you're talking about that one, whether you're talking about Brotherhood, like those are all, those two are, when people talk about like what are some of the strongest canon books, like those are in the contention. And so this is going to be another one that's sort of in that kind of lineage of telling that Master and Apprentice story. So I think there's a lot of potential for it to kind of meet that bar and maybe even exceed that bar that like those prior books have set.
Yeah. And this author, Madeline Rue, has she written anything before? She's written like some of the short stories.
Yeah.
Right.
So
But this is her first novel.
Yeah, this is her first novel. So she sort of like famously / infamously wrote the I'm now blanking on Eclipse, which is the Bail Organa, the Bail and Breya story
that's right.
in Thakpa of A New Hope.
Yeah. Oh,
which
it
if
was a
you
good
read
one.
it, yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot. And I mean, the gravitas, man, we need it, So if she's gonna bring it, again, I want them to go all the way with this book. I am interested, the Eyes Like Stars book, I'm interested to see, since they're marketing this as the Star Wars romance novel, and we've gotten romance in our Star Wars novels. You pointed out one of the big ones in Lost Stars. I want to see how they're gonna make this one different.
Yeah.
Like what's the distinction? And again, go all the way with it. If you're going to give me a romance novel, like give me a romance novel. Like I don't really read romance novels, so I don't know what I'm getting into, but like I want to know, like when I read it, like this is it. This is the genre. And maybe I take it, maybe I leave it. Like that's kind of irrelevant at this point. I just want them to go all the way with it.
Yeah, agreed. Like ever since last year, they announced that they were doing this sort of genre thing, and that we're now going to get these books that are going to be branded as like a Star Wars blank book, romance, and then later this year horror. I've been sort of interested in like, okay, like well, we've it's not like Star Wars hasn't dealt with genres like romance and horror before in the books or elsewhere. So what does it mean that we're now going to be slapping this label on? And so I'm going to be interested to see, like, does this book read? Does it feel different from a Lost Stars or a Crash of Fate or something?
Yeah. And like, does it do that and still feel like Star Wars? Like that's something, of course, you and I talk about how much we love A Crash of Fate all the time on here.
Yeah.
That book, like, sure, it's got the trimmings of Batu and stuff like that, but it still feels very Star Wars without having a bunch of the Star Wars, like, go-to elements in it, right? Which, like, Lost Stars, since it's happening parallel to, during the time of the original trilogy, you've got your Vaders, you got your Star Destroyers, you got your TIE Fighters and X-Wings and all of that stuff that, like, okay, cool, I know where I'm at. Crash of Fate doesn't have that and still manages to feel very Star Wars. Is Eyes Like Stars going to have that aspect to it? I'm really intrigued to see. I know we've got our early advanced copies, so we'll be digging into those. Of course, we've got some books to catch up on. Lindsay and I are talking about how we're going to catch up on things with Don't Burn the Sacred Text, but we'll have more coming there on that episode. How's your Thrawn reread going?
I have not yet gotten into the Ascendancy trilogy, but
Okay.
it is in the distance.
It is in the
Yeah.
very far distance. Well, I have been Star Warsing some Thrawn stuff. Always trying to avoid Thrawn stuff per usual. But I did some. You guys, you can kind of see back here. I did a little bit of redecorating. If you look on the camera, got some new shelves and stuff. So I redid the Star Wars office area a little bit. So that was. I always love doing that. And just seeing how you can get your pieces, your collection to fit together, and kind of what story you can tell. I don't know if you are you a person that you like to group the characters together with who they belong, or do you just like throw stuff up there?
I like to group, as you can see, if you're watching the video, you can see over my shoulder, you can see part of my Vaders. There's more around that are off camera. So yeah, I like to group.
Yeah, for sure. I think it just adds a little bit to the collection. So I've been doing a little bit of that, and then I'm getting caught up on my Star Wars books actually, and reading the Last Order, the Finn and Jaina book, which I am enjoying a lot more than I expected to.
All right.
I kind of well, it's almost not fair to say more than I expected to, because I literally went into it with no expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really care one way or another. Finn and Jaina are just not. They're not characters I like. They're not characters I dislike. I just could, they're there. They're good. Whatever. Don't really, connect with them on any certain level, like a Rey or an Ahsoka or anything like that. But dang, if I am not really getting behind 1719, man, this book really does some work with Jaina's character. So I'm enjoying that quite a bit and working my way through that. And I'm blanking on the author's name. Do you remember off the top of your head?
Oh, yeah, because this is his first Kwame Mbalia.
Yes. Let's get him back. The book is really well written. I have some issues with some of the structure that's just a preference thing, but in terms of the characters and the relationships and stuff like that, I'm really enjoying the book. So that's been a really good time. And I really, man, I don't know why, I've just been in a Star Wars music mood.
All right.
Really just listening to Star Wars music, in the car, of course, when I'm writing. And I wanted to ask you, just obviously this could change because, Star Wars opinions change all the time. In terms of just a score to listen to, what do you think is the best Star Wars score?
For my money, it's Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
I think just because of that, you can really tell that John Williams thought this was the last time he was going to do Star Wars, and he just really takes everything to 11. Every bit of music, whether it's the opening in the Battle of Coruscant, then obviously on Mustafar, but then even something like the Grievous theme, you have the the opera music, you have the I'm forgetting what the name of Padme's Ruminations. There's so much great music. There's so much unique music, and it's you've got obviously you got the big bellicose pieces, but then even some of those more sort of quieter ones for those scenes, whether it is the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, or when they're gazing through the windows, across Coruscant. Even those quieter moments, the music is still just hits. So for me, it's that.
Okay. Revenge of the Sith is definitely up there. I asked the question because I just randomly decided, I usually do my playlist. I'll listen to the prequels or the sequels or the original trilogy. I really just sat down yesterday morning, the day before that. I was like, I want to listen to Empire Strikes Back. And so I put on the Empire Strikes Back soundtrack, and god dang, dude, you think about Empire Strikes Back and you think, oh, the Imperial March is everywhere.
Yeah.
You think of Yoda's theme, stuff like that. But there's just so much good music in there, and the way that it flows, and it's just it is very like all the themes like tie together, you know. Yoda's theme feels like it's connected to Han and Leia, and just all of that stuff really works really well when as just listening to the score. You know, I think for my money, when you look at this, might be sacrilege, but for my money, when you look at like the movies, it's really hard for me not to say like the prequels use the music better. Just
I
I
agree.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think he just knew like what Star Wars music was at that point. Where in the original trilogy, like there is some discovery going on there, especially like the A New Hope to Empire transition. But as far as like listening to a score, I really loved Empire Strikes Back. What's the best non John Williams soundtrack for you?
Ooh. I think I'm probably gonna give it to Rogue One.
Okay. Okay.
I think Rogue One is really strong. I think you get like some really good themes. Like you get the sort of like not the Imperial March. I forget what it's called on the track, but it's sort of like
Oh yeah,
Rogue
yeah, I know
One's
what you're talking about.
version of like whatever the Imperial
I think it's
theme is.
Krennic's aspirations or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, like you get that, you get the kind of end, I think it's called like Your Father Would Be Proud, like all the kind of
Yeah.
end music when you sort of hit that fever pitch. And just like when you think about like the backstory of like Giacchino had like some
3 weeks.
yeah, like stupid little amount of time to score the whole thing and he produces that. It's
Yeah.
very, very good.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. The like I love the solo score. I think it's really really good. But it's kind of a cheat to me because John Williams made Han's theme for that, and
Mhm.
that threads so much through and is the foundation of everything. I don't think that diminishes what John Powell did necessarily. But if I'm looking at like the non John Williams of it all, it's got to go to Rogue One. Absolutely, definitely. We need to do more Star Wars music
We
episodes.
do.
You
Yeah,
know, we're gonna add that to our list of
definitely.
things to do because this is a fun conversation to have. And Star Wars music is it's never a bad time to listen to Star Wars music, that's for sure. But right now I think, it's a good time. Let's get into our topic for the evening, which is perception creates reality. And we're gonna look at this through the lens of Star Wars. Again, like some of this is going to be some stuff that'll probably be in the book. Some of it won't be. Like this is just an open conversation we want to have around the concept, and just explore how it is looked at in Star Wars. So, Devor, I want to start with a really simple question, and that is when you think about perception creates reality and Star Wars, what comes to your mind?
Okay, yeah. I was really excited when you texted me. You said that this was going to be the topic, that this is the chapter we're going to talk about, and you threw it in there because there was something my brain went to like immediately to talk about because one, obviously it fits with this theme perfectly, and it also just happens to be just one of my favorite sequences in Star Wars. And you were just talking about the Empire Strikes Back, and so that's where I'm bringing the conversation back to,
Yeah.
and it's Yoda lifting the X-wing
Mm-hmm.
because like that whole sequence, like it's so good because it's like it's George getting very obviously very spiritual when he's talking about Yoda. Getting very like philosophical because it's this whole conversation essentially about belief and faith, because the thing that you know Yoda is trying to bring home to Luke is that like because Luke is practicing with the Force and lifting the rocks, and he's trying to get the X-wing out, and he's like, the rocks are one thing, this is totally different, and then he has the like no different, like only different in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, and it's sort of like it's bringing home this whole thing that like is really throughout the whole Dagobah sequence with Luke, about this idea that like Luke is on this journey to become a Jedi and he wants to do it. And obviously, the big motivation is like he has this sort of heroic image of his father, but he doesn't really quite understand what it really means to be a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Yoda gives him the whole line about deepest commitment, most serious mind. And also, particularly, he doesn't really yet like fully believe in the Force.
It's a
right?
good
Like
point.
he doesn't like he believes that it exists, right? Like he has that, back in A New Hope, when he's talking to Han, like, you don't believe in the Force and all that. Like he believes it, like it's a thing in the universe, but he doesn't really believe in its power. And that's illustrated in that moment. And when Yoda gives the line about, like, judge me by my size, do you, my ally is the Force and a powerful ally it is. And he's like, you have to, like, you really have to accept, like you have to feel the Force everywhere, you, me, the tree, the rock, all of that. And then he has the sort of defeated line about, you want the impossible. And then, of course, Yoda does the quote unquote impossible. And then that whole sequence ends with, like, I don't believe it, that is why you fail. And like what Yoda is trying to kind of impart to Luke is, like, the reason that he can't lift the X-Wing out of the swamp is not because it can't be done, but it's because he believes it can't be done. So he's told himself it's not possible, and therefore he doesn't sort of let the Force in and really try to do it. But because Yoda has that belief and the faith that it is, like, those things are possible through the Force, he's then able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I think that's a great place to start, because it is kind of the pinnacle of this. I think that is what takes Qui-Gon's line of your focus determines your reality and really makes it real, right?
Yeah.
When you look at, the Star Wars story chronologically. Because Luke is focused on, what he can't do. And that's why, the do or do not, there is no try is so powerful. It's not just because it's catchy, it's because it's real, right? You either do something or you don't do it. There's no trying to do it. Like, trying to do it is an excuse for why you fail, right? You either do it or you don't. And you can put effort into it and fail, and that's okay, right? Like, I don't think that's what Yoda is saying. Yoda's not saying, like, you have to get this right, but it's, if you come into the mindset of, I'm going to try with this, you're already making an excuse for your failure, which is what Luke is doing, right? He's doing that with saying it's different. The Rock and the X-Wing are different, like you pointed out. And Yoda says, no, like, only in your mind. And what he's really trying to get at there, which you pointed out, is like, you have to stop thinking about things in such black and white terms, right? And you have to come to this place of peace, and understanding that it's all connected, right? Which, like, when you go to the training scene with Luke and Yoda, I can't remember if it's before or after, I think it's after this event, but where Luke says, how am I supposed to tell the good side from the bad? And Yoda says, you will know when you are calm, at peace, passive. That is where you get that perception creates reality. If you are in this state of fluster, if you are in the state of being out of control of your thoughts, if you are in the state of anxiety, the anxiety is going to start filling the gaps, right? It's going to start filling in the holes with all these things that could be true, which is the dark side infesting things. It's the dark side coming in and saying, telling you this story, and that creates a certain reality. But when you are calm and peace, passive, then you get more of what the true story is, because you can take a second and you can look at everything and see what's really going on.
Yeah, and I think I would argue even that, like, you talked about how the way this scene sort of works, it works well connecting, like, backward to the Qui-Gon line. I would argue, like, it also works sort of connecting forward to the moment in Rise of Skywalker, right? Like when Luke lifts out the X-Wing, right? The thing that he says to Rey right before he does it says, "You have everything you need," right? And what he's talking about there, I mean, there's sort of like a literal sense, because she's like telling him, like, well, how do I, like, get to Exegol? I don't have a ship, like,
Yeah.
So he's saying in a literal sense, well, like, here is a ship, you have everything you need. But I think there's also a sort of figurative sense in which he's also trying to, he's now in the position of being the master. He's now imparting the Yoda lesson of, like, it's in here, right? Like, you have everything you need in here. Like what determines whether you win or lose is not the, like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that. It's up here. Right? It's like, are you mentally in the right space? Like, that's going to determine whether you beat Palpatine or not, right? Like, it's not the external stuff. Like, you have, and that's the same lesson that Yoda is trying to impart to Luke in the swamp on Dagobah. Like, you have everything. You can lift the X-Wing. You just got to believe that you can do it.
Well, and when you get to the end of Rise of Skywalker and we get the moment with Rey laying there hearing all the voices of the Jedi, that is her finally accepting that she has everything that she needs. it's kind of like when Qui-Gon appears in the Obi-Wan series and he tells Obi-Wan, like, I've always been here, you just weren't ready to hear me, or you weren't ready to see me, or whatever he says.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that is I think we put in these roadblocks in front of ourselves because we think we're incapable of something, or think we don't deserve something, or whatever excuse it is that we make, right? It's too big, it's too hard, it's too whatever, and that becomes our reality. But when we focus on what's possible, something else happens. And like, one of the things I was writing about, not necessarily for this chapter, for another one, was about the relationship between Shmi and Anakin, and how she gives him this selfless love and worth, just because he is, not because of what he has accomplished, not because of what he's going to do. And when he loses that, which the your focus determines your reality, is kind of like at this crux point, right? When, like, he's about to lose Qui-Gon, which means he's about to lose anybody that would advocate for him seeing his mom again. It's really saying, like, if you focus on those things that are dark, those things that tell you you have to earn, those things that tell you that you have to accomplish, you lose that, unconditional love and that inherent worth. And that kind of is a breaking point for Anakin, right? Where he goes down a dark path because his perception creates this reality that is not true. It becomes true, actually, because he makes it true, because he is afraid it's going to be true, right? And so it can become this vicious cycle if you don't, like we were talking about before, be calm, at peace, and passive. So I guess really the point there is, like, because Anakin believed that he had to save Padme, because Ben believed that he was beyond redemption, because of these things, like, these characters made these bad choices. But on the flip side, when Luke lifts the X-wing in Rise of Skywalker, when Rey starts to believe that she has everything that she needs, like, when those moments happen, when Luke goes, surprise, surprise, guess what I'm going to mention? The second Death Star. When Luke goes there, but, like, what that moment when he's lying on the ground being electrocuted by the Emperor, like, he still believes in his dad. He still believes in his father, because he has chosen to perceive the reality that his dad is worthy of love. And so it can go both ways. And I think that's something that people lose sight of, is it's like, well, I'm determined, or I'm destined, rather, to go down this one path. And it's like, no, you get to choose the path you walk, depending on how you decide to perceive the challenges that you face.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah. So, what are, for you, like, what are some of the great examples of characters seeing something? Like, I mentioned some, like Anakin and Ben, but, like, what are some great examples of characters seeing something that wasn't true, and how do you think that, like, that influenced their actions?
Let's see. I'm gonna try to think of some examples. Seeing things that aren't true,
or seeing things, like, maybe that are misconstrued, or anything of that nature.
Yeah. Well, I immediately sort of think about this kind of, like, there's almost, it seems like generationally, there's sort of like a Skywalker curse of, like, seeing visions and then, sort of reading, obviously, like, different things are potentially too much into them, so of course you obviously you start with Anakin, and he has the, he sees, well, first he has the visions about Shmi in Attack of the Clones, but then also, seeing Padme dying in childbirth in Revenge of the Sith, and you see the way that, like, his perception there of, like, what he thinks is going to happen, and then, like, well, I need to kind of prevent that from happening. That sort of ends up leading him to make a series of decisions such that he ends up sort of bringing these things to pass. And then, like, in similar fashion, you see with Luke, in Empire, he has the vision on Dagobah about Han and Leia and them being in pain, and he's asking Yoda, like, will they die, like, is what I'm seeing, like, am I actually seeing the kind of capital F future? And Yoda is telling him, like, always in motion is the future. So it's like, this could happen, it could not happen, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
nature of visions. Like they're not actually telling us like the definitive future as it has been written down before it has happened. It is telling us one potential thing that could happen. But because he sort of perceives it as this is the thing that is going to happen, that ends up leading him to cutting the training short and facing Vader before he's really ready and all of that. And then, you go forward in the sequel trilogy and, Leia having the vision of the death of Ben at the end of her Jedi path, that leading her to walk away from that path. And it's sort of like, okay, like in what ways? I mean, there, we don't, because we only have kind of parts of that story. We can't quite see the kind of, like the causality, how like A to B to C. Like we can't see it as clearly as we can in the like Anakin and Luke examples. But we can't sort of think, like, okay, like when by Leia choosing to, give up the saber and not continue down the Jedi path because she has this vision of her son dying, like might that in some way have kind of created a set of events such that made Kylo Ren more likely than if she had stayed on the Jedi path? Not to like blame Leia for Kylo Ren, but to say like,
well, but no, you can say the same thing with Luke too,
yes,
right? Like
exactly.
Luke looked into him, and so it's the same kind of thing. Just
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same with Luke, because he senses the darkness, and that causes him to act in a way that then gets Ben to react, and then all the dominoes are falling.
Yeah, and it goes to that your focus determines your reality. Like it's going to keep coming back to that. Like that, there's a reason that line is in the Phantom Menace and in or comes from the voice of the conscious, or the Jiminy Cricket of that movie in Qui-Gon Jinn, because it's supposed to be one of the main themes of the movie and one of the main themes of Star Wars. And you've got to look at Anakin. Well, he focuses on Padme dying, so it creates the reality of Padme dying. Luke focuses on his friends getting hurt, and his friends get hurt. Luke and Leia focus on what's going to happen to Ben and the possible darkness that he could face, and it creates that, right? And of course, like it's hard with the Ben Solo thing because like Ben is responsible for his own decisions,
yes,
right? But also, the things that happen around you influence the choices that you make,
right?
And so when we get to the end with Rise of Skywalker, and he has that moment where he's standing with Han again, and it's that memory, right, through the Force of Han, and he gets another chance to do that. I know what I need to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Moment. That is your focus determines your reality. That is him going through. You're having an opportunity to relive a moment, right? Something that, in essence, Anakin got to do in choosing Luke, right? And choosing Luke in the second Death Star, because he had that opportunity. He had the opportunity with Padme standing in front of him saying, I love you, come back. And he chooses not to. And then Luke is an embodiment of Padme, and he's saying, I love you, come back. And he chooses to do that. So there's always the beauty of Star Wars is it tells us that there's always the opportunity for redemption. There's always the opportunity to focus on something different and create a different reality, right? If we choose fear, we're going to live out fear. If we choose hope, we're going to live in hope. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, like, how do fear and hope act like these competing lenses through which characters see the same situations, right? So like comparing, like, how do Luke and Vader, for example, see similar situations differently, and how does that change how they act from them?
Yeah, it's interesting, because if you think about sort of fear and hope kind of side by side, like one, and we did a whole episode related to hope, so go listen to that episode if you haven't.
And a whole episode related to fear too.
Yes,
like,
exactly. Yeah. And so, like, when you think about them side by side, it's like hope kind of opens up possibilities, right? It lays out like there's things we could do, like there's opportunities, there's chances we could take, and like fear kind of forecloses them, right? Like fear kind of locks you in. So, you think about the Luke Vader of it all, for example, like in Return of the Jedi. Luke, obviously he is going to Vader and he has this hope, he has this faith that Anakin Skywalker is still in there and I can reach to him and I can bring him back and I can turn him back to life. And so that is what is motivating him to like go after Vader and like confront him and like face the Emperor and all of that. And you see Vader, who is still, he's starting to turn, but he is still very much in the grips of Palpatine and of the dark side and of fear and anger and hate. And for him, like that is close off. He had like, it's too late for me, son, right? Like he believes in that moment, there is no opportunity for me to turn the light. I'm too far gone. Like I've accepted this life and this is what I am. And yeah, so I think there's a great contrast there in terms of like the way that like hope sort of animates Luke and motivates him to try to take these actions and take these risks and take a chance on his father, and the way that the fear for Vader is kind of keeping him locked and thinking like there's like I can't turn back, like whatever I'm feeling towards my son, like whatever like little love and compassion and connection there is, like that's not stronger than like the grip that the dark side has on.
Yeah, and that balcony scene that they have in Return of the Jedi is that moment, right? Is the crux of that. And what I love most about that scene is actually towards the end, when Vader goes and he leans against the railing.
So good.
Like, and just he just hangs his head a little bit, because I think that is the moment where the armor starts to crack.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
And he starts to see like, well, here's this kid, my kid, right, who reflects me, and he's seeing the same situation that I'm seeing, but he's seeing it from a different perspective. And I wonder too if Qui-Gon's line is going through his head at that moment. If he, I kind of like, you have, do you ever watch those YouTube edits, like Star Wars edits and stuff different, set to music or whatever, like when Obi-Wan's in the hut and he's talking to Luke about Anakin and they do all the flashbacks. I have this like version of that scene when Vader leans over and it just his entire history replays in front of him.
Yeah.
Right. And he starts to think of, what if I had made a different decision? Because really the difference between hope and fear is just a decision, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not an easy decision. Like I don't want to make it like that. Like it's a very hard decision sometimes. But you choose to have hope or you choose to live in fear. And that choice, it decides which direction your life is going to go. And that's really what the contrast of Luke and Anakin is about. And that's really what perception creates reality is all about. Is like, what is the decision you make around the information that you have? You can look at Luke and Kylo in The Last Jedi, in the 3 versions of that hut scene that we get. That is their perception has created the reality. I don't think, this is going to sound weird, but I don't think Luke lied to Rey. I think he had convinced himself that was true.
Yeah,
right,
100%.
And then he finally, like, it's kind of like a trauma response. You have some people who go through traumatic experiences and they bury the memory so deep that they just literally don't remember that it happened, or they remember it a different way. And it's like, is it true? No. But is it valid? Yes. Right. And Luke's version is valid. My dad raised me. He said, there's always 3 sides to a story. There's your side, my side, and the truth. And that's what's going on. Like, that's what I see in the Luke Kylo story. We see Luke's side, we see Kylo's side, we see the truth. And I don't think that Luke lied to her. I think that he had a perception that was misconstrued because he was trying to protect his mental well-being. And the same thing for Kylo. Kylo's version is not completely true because he needs to justify becoming Kylo Ren. And that's just how he's doing it. But there are so many moments like that. There's so many moments when 2 characters see the same thing or go through the same experience, and it leads them to different outcomes, right? Ahsoka and the Jedi Council in season 5 of Clone Wars, right? They see the bombing of the Jedi Temple. They see Ahsoka being framed, and they lean into it. And then when you get to the end, and they're like, "Oh, it's your great trial," and da, 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 da. And she's like, "No, I think I'm good. Like that's not how this should work." You look at even how going to episode 1 again, how Obi-Wan and Maul's, they experienced the same, event in the Duel of the Fates, and it influenced them in very different ways. So whatever you go through is going to have some kind of impact on you. And all of that is to say, it comes down to the decision you make around the information that you have. And that's to go back to the beginning of our conversation. Really what Yoda is saying there, like, take the information you have, but like, don't make up stories and allow your anxieties to fill in the gaps. Look at the truth of what you have, right? And for Yoda, that means that the Force is all powerful and all encompassing. And so it's just it comes down to a decision, and you've got to decide. And so I guess, at what point does what is, like, I guess, a breaking point you think that Star Wars tells us that makes us have to decide to go one way or the other? Do we have to have some kind of traumatic event, or is it something that we can make on the date?
Well, when I think about some of the examples that we've talked about here, where different Star Wars characters have sort of faced that fork in the road, right? Like it does seem like that, like what seems to be at least the breaking point or the catalyst for a lot of them is like that, like there's something that like that hits at like something that's kind of fundamental to them, like whether it is like something that they are either like passionate about, that they care about, that's really important, or that maybe speaks to like some kind of primal fear or anxiety that they have,
For
right?
sure.
Like you think about in Luke's situation, like in the couple Luke examples we talk about, whether it's Empire and The Last Jedi, it's sort of like the two sides of the coin, where it's like it's simultaneously like it's the love that he has for his friends Han and Leia, but then there's also like fear about them, about them being in pain and suffering. And then it's similar when he's sensing the darkness around Ben, like he's having that, like he's getting that moment of like, oh no, like it's coming back, like here it is again, like I gotta stop it before it gets stronger. And like that causes him to like make these decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And it all comes down to identity, right? And like, what does it say about your identity and your self-perception, and how that plays into kind of what your destiny becomes, and so you have these huge moments. You have, Anakin turning to the dark side. You have the Luke going into Ben's hut. You have Ahsoka walking away from the Jedi Order, and all of these things are monumental and they're huge, but they all come down to very small, intimate things of Anakin's insecurity, Luke's fear, Ahsoka's confidence, like all of these things. And when you look across Star Wars, you have these moments of declaration of identity. You have, Rey saying, "I'm just a scavenger." Is her really saying, I don't belong in this story? Her story is about her figuring out how she fits into it. I'm no Jedi, is Ahsoka saying, like, I'm walking a new path. Luke saying, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. Like, that is him not declaring that he is a Jedi master and he's the Grand Master and he's going to do all these things. It's literally him declaring, like, I am my father's son. It's very intimate. And I think that a lot of times we get caught in this idea that there has to be this grand moment of decision, right? And this grand moment of everything's got to change. And it's little small moments like that that really shape who we become and the stories that we tell about ourselves. So with that, like, how does Star Wars challenge us to question the stories we tell about ourselves and about other people? What is it? How does it look at assumptions that these characters make and have to let go of before they can grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that Star Wars tells in that way. Like, we've talked about we've talked about the Last Jedi example about the sort of the night that Ben turns and getting to see it from how Kylo perceives it, how Luke perceives it, and then the kind of quote unquote like the truth, like how it actually happened. And I think like there is a moment that's a case where Star Wars is kind of telling us like, okay, like consider that like different people are perceiving things differently and like try to sort of understand their point of view and like how their perception of may influence like the decisions they make or how they act. Like even if two people are in the exact same situation and going through the same thing, like in their head they may be filtering it differently, and that
Hmm.
causes them to like end up making different decisions. So it's like, so I think like I think there's that. I think I think Star Wars also offers the advice and the counsel to sort of like slow down, which I think
Mm,
is kind of important because I think about, it's a great conversation in the Phantom Menace, and we don't talk about it much, but it's the first conversation that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have, right when they show up in the conference room, and like Obi-Wan has that like, I've got a bad feeling about this, like he senses, and he's talking about like, it's not the mission, it's elsewhere, elusive. And then Qui-Gon is telling him, don't center on your anxieties, keep your concentration here and now where it belongs. And then Obi-Wan kind of comes back and says like, but like Yoda says, we should be mindful of the future. And then Qui-Gon
not at
comes
the
back and
expense of the
not
moment.
at the expense of the moment, right? Like, he tells him to be mindful of the living force. So like there is a great lesson about the like stay in the moment, right? Like
Hmm.
don't allow your mind, don't allow your emotions to get sort of caught up too much, either maybe in looking backwards and like regret or something like that, or looking forward like, oh, what if this happens, what if that happens, like, oh no, like what's gonna come, like there's that sort of Qui-Gon lesson of like, be here now, right? Be in the present. And that's
For
really
sure.
important.
It's critical. I mean, that is that's the same thing that Yoda is telling Luke in Empire, to go back to what we were talking about originally, right?
Yeah.
Luke is 100% centering on his anxieties, on the
Mm-hmm.
pressure of becoming a Jedi, on the expectations he feels like he has to live up to, and Yoda's telling him like, no, just connect with the Force, just be present. Like, I'm able to do that because the Force is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, the line that like in some ways we started this conversation with, and kind of is the kind of motivates this chapter, the Qui-Gon line about your focus determines your reality. Like that's a line from Star Wars that I think about a lot, and I'm like, well, I think like he is correct. Like, Qui-Gon got that one right. Like I do often like sort of think about that, and the way that like, to try to think about the way that what I'm focusing on, like what am I giving attention to, or what am I neglecting, the way that that kind of can shape the way that I'm thinking, feeling, if I'm, feeling good, feeling bad, or maybe the way that I'm treating other people, or the way that I perceive other people or interpret other people's actions and things like that. Like I sort of think about that, like, okay, like some of that may be like what's quote unquote objectively happening, and like some of that could be like the filters in my head, like giving me a particular version of like what's happening, and to sort of like think of like, and to kind of like pause and think like, okay, like what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing like may not be sort of the whole story. And I think also, as we just talked about, I think the value of like trying to keep yourself in the here and now is, again, like something that's very hard, because it's so easy to like, again, the to do the like looking backward and being like, oh man, like I shouldn't have done that, or that was really like, if only I'd done X instead of Y. then things would be different or things would be better or whatever, or the looking forward of like, oh, like what's going to happen? Like, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? Or so on. And like, just trying to stay like in the moment and like think about today and like take things one thing at a time. Again, it's hard, but it is something that I try to do. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. All right. So on social media, you can find me over on Blue Sky at Demondum. You can also listen to me as a co-host over on Space Swifties, a Star Wars and Taylor Swift podcast that I host with my wife, the one and only Meg Dow. Hi ho. We did.